Welcome to our second part about leading at a distance. My name is Ute Lorenzen and I'm the Managing Director of Impact C&C, which stands for Coaching and Conflict Management. We offer our services to internationally operating companies, to a large extent to those with a German-speaking background. In this series we are talking about what it means to lead at a distance, especially in international companies. Bridging distances has always been a key issue of international business. The means of bridging distances have changed, however, over time, starting from ships, horses, letters, over telegrams, telephone, trains and planes, to the internet and visual web conferencing platforms as we have today. Bridging distances has become easier, and with the technological progress we all feel that the world has become smaller. However, the distances remain in a lot of senses. Our interest is to look into what are the effects of leading and collaborating over distances, and also to see what changes occur when the means of bridging distances change. In the first episode, we talked about the additional aspects that characterize leadership in the international sphere, and we also talked about issues that frequently arise from leading distances. In the first part, we defined 4 dimensions of distance: geographical distance, cultural distance, language distance, and also what we call organizational distance. Each of these dimensions require the attention of the manager or team leader or leader of a unit or entity working cross-border. In this part, we will be dealing with geographical distance, that is, people working permanently or for long stretches of time in different geographical locations. In our view, 2 core issues of geographical distance are presence and contact. How can people be present although they're hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart? And basically, what do we mean if we talk about presence and contact? We'll look into these questions and ask, how can managers establish and maintain presence and contact over geographical distances? If teams fail to build up presence and contact, some possible effects could be that team members are not committed and lack self-responsibility, or that they withdraw easily when it is getting difficult. And so with consequence that the whole team is lacking cohesion. It could lead to absenteeism, that for different stated reasons, continuous participation is an issue in the team. And it also could be difficult for a team leader or unit leader to assess the performance of the different team members. So this all could mean and can result in that the team does not live up to its potential, does not deliver the necessary results, has a mounting turnover of team members, and in consequence that the business results are in danger. Let's take a closer look at presence. Seemingly, physical distance precludes presence. If one does not share the same physical space with somebody else, one is not there, one is not present. But saying that, and at the same time thinking back to what happened during and after the pandemic, this former reality has become sort of unhinged. If during a conference in London a speaker addresses her audience online from Paris, is she present? Or is she not present? Over the last 10 or 15 years, since the emergence of online platforms and video conferencing tools, there seems to have been an agreement that if somebody is remote, he or she is rather not present. A lot of discussion has been going on that communicating remotely via a platform, people's presence is somewhat reduced. The impression is that something is missing in virtual contact. We see less of each other in a physical sense. We're not able to read each other's body language and gestures, and we cannot decide where we let our eyes wander, apart from what the tiles let us see. Media scientists call this channel reduction. However, concerning this reduced presence or channel reduction, there are some interesting insights from research. Already in 2014, an Australian study dealt with the question if virtual therapy conducted via telephone or video platforms works as well as in-person sessions. Well, Australia is a vast country, so it comes to no surprise that virtual formats were tried out and tested early on. In therapy, it is of significant importance that a strong link between therapist and client is built up. So it was investigated if and in how far people in counselling did feel indeed that the other person was only partly there. The result was that the overwhelming majority felt that they were completely present and their vis-a-vis also. These people said that they felt they were in the same room as the therapist rather than in a geographically different location. They did not perceive the virtual meeting room as distancing them from the person they were talking to. So how is that to be explained? Research has since, in fact, distinguished between physical and social presence, which is sometimes also called subjective presence. Social presence is the sense of being present and being there with another person while retaining at the same time a clear sense of the actual separate locations. Apparently, we as human beings can do that. We can fully perceive people in all dimensions of presence, even if they are physically far away. That means presence is not a matter of geographical proximity, and presence is not constituted solely via physical proximity. Indeed, there are several ways of action which can be used, and leaders can take advantage of them to boost this mechanism which we are all capable of. Establishing presence needs attention, either in the virtual room or by other means of remote collaboration and communication, for example via email or via telephone. In the following, we will point out some of our ideas. Fostering connectivity is in our view central to enhancing the social presence of your team. The term connectivity might be more associated with IT and telephone communication. We use it here in the broad sense, in the sense of connecting with other people. Fostering connectivity is concerned with shaping ways of getting and keeping in contact and with the quality of contact. Remote leadership needs to consider how to shape connectivity far more strongly than in-presence leadership, because it has no corridors where to meet by chance, no coffee machines and no canteens, and it has no informal meeting spaces nor informal meeting times. So let's start with heartbeat. You might not immediately connect the term heartbeat with leadership or collaboration. Heartbeat is about rhythm, frequency, pacing, continuity and regularity, and it is about keeping the body going. We think heartbeat is a good metaphor to think about in remote leadership. Collaboration needs a heartbeat. How it is shaped is for you to decide together with your team, and it's most probably determined by your tasks and work requirements. If you start creating a heartbeat, you start thinking about your team's rhythm, your pacing, what form of regularity your work needs, your team needs, and you as the responsible team leader. Which rhythm do you need to keep going? What do you need for your team to have the necessary energy? What to have the necessary strength, stamina and resilience? And which frequency enhances commitment in your team? Heartbeat does not mean as often as possible, obviously. On the contrary, heartbeat is also about finding the right balance between not enough contact and a communication overkill. Let's talk about the next point, which is richness. Richness has to do with intensity of contact and the way you and your team interact. Richness can be created by different meeting and communication formats. Experience shows that remote work designs favor issue-related contacts and communication. In terms of efficiency, that seems to be a good choice. However, in terms of presence and contact, it could be a problematic one over the long run. The less experience you and your team have with each other due to a one-format collaboration, the less you see of each other, and we mean this in the broader sense of the word. Next to issue-related meetings, where you go through your agenda of solving problems, designing next steps, and generally coordinate your workflow, you might have formats for retrospectives and evaluation, formats that center on feedback or in-depth discussions, on innovation or on reflection and learning. You can create pure formats or blended ones, both is possible. The general rule is the aim and the purpose of the interaction decide on the format. And by using different methods of how you talk about something, you can enrich team interaction even further. Especially since the pandemic, there are countless virtual templates and tools you can use to enrich interaction, but it is good to keep in mind that it does not have to be complex or intricate, only focused. For that, sometimes simple but focused questions, for example, will do. Different manners of how you interact bring to the foreground different aspects of your team's competencies and their personalities. And you don't have to do it all yourself. Richness of interaction is also about participation. Everybody in your team can take over responsibility to create and execute different formats. This is involvement and this is commitment. Bringing everybody into the play is another way of intensifying presence. So let's turn to the third point, which is paths. A path is the indicated route from point A to point B. We use it here as a metaphor for people's approach to each other, so in a very concrete sense. Let's take the example of an open door policy. Obviously, open doors are not visible remotely, so you have to define and shape them. You have to define and shape points of access to you as the leader. How do you create an open door at a distance? Along which paths are you accessible by your team, and along which paths do you access your staff? How and when can members of your team contact you? What can your team members expect in case you are nevertheless not available then? And do you want to channel certain kinds of questions or queries to specific times in order to calculate better the necessary time? And by way of which media can you be contacted? All these questions have to be equally addressed for the whole team. In relation to your specific workflow requirements, your leadership task and team needs, access points, availability, response times, and media use need to be defined. In this way, everybody knows how to get into contact and what to expect from each other, and also what they need to do themselves to communicate. It might, for example, be useful to define collect and bring mechanisms, meaning who is at what point responsible to fetch or to provide, for example, information. In this way, paths towards each other in remote collaboration are clear. Clear paths create reliability, accountability, and responsibility. And that's what you need a lot of in remote collaboration. So let's turn to the last point, which is overlap. Overlap has to do with synchronicity, meaning shared simultaneous presence, and asynchronicity, meaning collaborating without sharing the same space and not necessarily the same time. In remote work, it is essential to find a team agreement on both. Teams working at large geographical distances face the challenge of different time zones and have to find ways to deal with that. Obviously, workflow reasons and cooperation needs will be the decisive parameters, but others come into play as well. Equality might be one, so that everybody's flexibility is called on in an equal manner. Also, the equal right to private work boundaries has to be considered. That's it for today. Thank you for your attention. The next part will be about cultural distance, followed by language and then organizational or internal distance. Watch out for the next part or follow us on LinkedIn. We're happy to receive your comments and hear about your experiences via LinkedIn or directly via email. Thanks again and bye-bye.